Is Police Chief Putney of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Force, and he is going to, I guess, give a timeline on how the shooting went down in North Carolina. And I got a lot of questions regarding his statements, because he is not being specific in the statements that he's making regarding the actions of the deceased.
Thank you, Mayor. Morning. First of all, this is a difficult time, so I'm trying to be respectful of all parties involved. I'm not going to jeopardize the integrity of the investigation, but I will tell you the facts as we know them today. Those facts are based on witnesses' statements and evidence that we found at the scene. Yesterday, September 20th, at about 4 o'clock, we had officers from our Metro Division Crime Reduction Unit searching for a suspect who was wanted for outstanding warrants. This occurred at the Village at College Downs Apartments. Our officers observed the subject, Mr. Keith Lamont Scott, inside a vehicle at the apartment complex. He exited the vehicle armed with...
Okay, now, this is my first question. The officers that went to go after that other individual, were they uniformed officers or plainclothes officers? That is my first question.
The handgun. The officers observed him get back into that vehicle, at which time they approached the vehicle.
Okay, now here's my second question. If these are non-uniformed officers that observed this gentleman get out of his car holding a handgun, what is their probable cause to approach this guy? Because North Carolina is an open carry state. You are legally able to open carry a handgun in North Carolina, okay? So, again, my question is, what is their probable cause?
To engage this subject. The officers gave loud, clear, verbal commands, which were also heard by many of the witnesses.
Okay, again, I'm back to, were they uniformed officers or undercover officers? Because you can't just listen to anybody yelling and screaming for you to do something, because there's a lot of bullshit out there. So if they were uniformed officers giving loud verbal commands, that's one thing. If they were undercover officers or non-uniformed officers yelling at this guy, that is another.
They were instructing the subject, once he got out of the vehicle, to drop the weapon. In spite of the verbal commands, Mr. Scott, as I said, exited his vehicle armed with a handgun as the officers continued to yell at him to drop it. He stepped out, posing a threat to the officers.
Okay, he stepped out posing a threat to the officers. What was the threat that he posed to the officers? Because if he stepped out with the handgun still pointing down, okay, not because it's legal to possess a handgun, okay, if that handgun was in his hand pointing down and it was legal for him to possess it, and they were non-uniformed police officers, I want them to explain to me the threat he posed, because nowhere am I hearing that he was attempting to point or that he pointed his weapon at those police officers. And again, were they uniformed or not?
And Officer Brentley Vincent subsequently fired his weapon, striking the subject. The officers immediately requested medic and began performing CPR. Medic responded and transported the subject to the scene to CMC, where he later was succumbed by his injuries. Our detectives, through their investigation, recovered the firearm that the subject was holding in his hand when he got out of the vehicle. He was in very close proximity to the subject. As per our departmental protocol, Officer Vincent is being placed on administrative leave as we investigate this. As you know, there's a criminal track and a parallel investigative internal track to make sure none of our policies are violated, along with none of our laws in the state of North Carolina being violated as per the criminal investigation. Yesterday evening.
Now, what I want to know is, in Texas, they just passed an open carry law. And police cannot mess with a person merely because he is open carrying either a long rifle or a handgun. If that is the only curiosity that a police officer has, he cannot act on that alone. Now, what they'll do is they'll make up some bullshit about jaywalking or spitting on the street or something like that. They'll try to make something up in order to engage you. But legally, if you haven't done anything wrong, you're just sitting there or standing there with your handgun in your holster. Now, the handgun must be in a holster, okay? Or it must be concealed. Your long rifle obviously can be out and exposed, all right? But if that is all it is and there's nothing else, you're just standing there minding your own business, not talking to anybody, not presenting a threat, i.e. you got the gun outside of your holster and you're brandishing, or you have your long rifle and you're brandishing, then obviously all bets are off. But if you do not have your handgun or your long rifle in a ready position, ready to fire, they cannot mess with you, okay? I'm wondering if they have that same requirement in the state of North Carolina, because if they did, or if they do, okay, and this guy wasn't violating the conduct that you're supposed to exhibit when holding or possessing a firearm, then we're going to have some issues there too. But the very first part of it, were they uniformed or ununiformed officers, that would solve a lot of issues for me, okay, one way or the other. And obviously if he pointed the weapon or was attempting to point the weapon, that also would help me come to a conclusion. At this point, I don't know what the hell happened here. I just know that this guy, who is supposed to be handicapped or disabled, is dead. A police officer is on another vacation, and we got a whole lot of unanswered questions.
Two questions. Did he have a gun in his hand the second time he came out of the car, and did he say whether the gun was loaded?
He did have a weapon when he exited the vehicle. I am not aware of whether or not it was loaded, sir. Again, this is very early in the investigation, and I get briefed every day. I haven't had an in-depth briefing yet.
So he came out of the car twice?
Yes, sir, he did.
Both times he had a gun in his hand?
No, sir. They saw the weapon in his hand the second time he exited.
The second time, thank you.
Okay, so now this is my question. The man gets out of the car. They didn't see a weapon the first time. So why did they go over to him?
Question. At any point, did the individual raise the weapon?
That I do not know definitively. That is a part of the statements that we still have yet to get. But at this point, I don't know that he definitively pointed the weapon specifically towards an officer.
Now, wouldn't that be one of the first things that the officer that killed that man said, that he had no choice? He ordered the man to drop the weapon. The man didn't drop the weapon and he pointed it at him, or he just continued to maintain the weapon in his hand. That would have been one of the first questions that they would have asked that officer in the investigation. But no, the first thing they asked the officer, well, I don't know what the first thing they asked the officer was, to be honest with you, because this guy had a private conversation that he's unwilling to reveal.
Yes, sir.
In the event that he would not have raised the weapon to the officer, this help us understand the situation. Would an officer be justified to fire even if an individual would not deploy with the officer?
It's a very good question. The totality of the situation is what carries the day. So if I'm making gestures, if I'm focusing in, if I'm turning my body in a certain way to look aggressive and to give you the understanding that an imminent threat is very, very likely, and I'm armed, all of those things in conjunction with one another can still give you that perceived threat under North Carolina law.
Let me translate that for you. If they see you with a gun in your hand, any move you make can be considered a threat to them, and then they are allowed to shoot your ass. That's what he just said. Any movement that they consider to be threatening, any movement in conjunction with you holding that handgun. So you could actually be facing them with a handgun and start to turn your back to them. They consider that you moving into a position to fire and shoot your ass.
Question for ex-Pen.
Yeah, Chief, can you tell me what your conversations were with Officer Vincent after what he talked to?
Could I tell you? Yes, but that's personal between me and him. I'm happy he's okay. It's a tragic event. Heart goes out to the Scott family for the loss.
Question right here.
Do you know what the light area was?
I do not, sir. Again, those are details we're yet to uncover. This is the very first day that we're really getting to delve into a lot of those issues, and we don't have all the facts at this point.
More than likely, he was licensed to carry, because one of the first things these dudes do is check the identity of the person that is supposedly the perpetrator. In this case, it's the victim, and they're going to check driver's license records, all of that stuff. And with 24 hours, you know damn near everything. So the first thing they did was check to see if this guy was licensed to carry. So more than likely, he was licensed to carry.
Judge. Absolutely, and I also want to thank many members of City Council who are here with me, including Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, that's that's political mumbo jumbo. I'm not interested in that.